Welcome back to the Content Complete podcast featuring myself, Spencer, my friend Matt with the Antaloor Gaming TV, and our guest for this particular episode, Dr. Emily freaking Moore. She works with educational, I hesitate to call them games, but educational
interactive
simulators for teaching different science concepts and things like that. How's it going?
Great. It's great. I just noticed that I literally am Dr. Emily freaking Moore.
Yeah, I made that in Paint about 30 minutes ago.
Thanks so much for that. I feel so special now.
Yeah, so for today's particular episode, not a whole lot is going to be different from our usual
Glockenspiel.
There you go. And, I guess docket. We're going to go over what we did this week, whether or not it's games or what have you. We're going to be talking about the Two Worlds 2 DLC, go over a Let's Play tip, talk about some publishers and development and accessibility in gaming, and then finish out with the Twitch submodel and affiliate program that were both recently announced. So we'll start with you. What did you do this week, Emily?
Yeah, so this week, I work creating educational simulations. So it's part of the educational gaming community. And a big part of my work now has been focused on adding sound to educational simulations to help them be more effective at helping students learn. So I'm focused a lot this week on creating sound cues for the simulations where students can build different atoms.
Okay, so cool, yeah. And the main focus of the sounds being for people who might be blind or have a limited vision, as well as people who just in general just want to be experiencing the game.
Yeah. It just helps make them be more immersive, immersive games.
Yeah, and sound is incredibly important for creating through lines with the information that you're trying to get across. So that's definitely a challenge for sure. Cool. And so you basically throughout the week, you were working on the sounds within the games. Is there anything else specific, gaming related, that you might have done?
Interactive learning simulation
related, or was that basically the bulk of your week?
So we're also working on creating descriptions. So when you're playing one of our simulations, if you can't see the screen, it's useful to have something read aloud to you so you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. So I've done a lot of work this week also. We have one simulation that's called John Travoltage. Mm-hmm. There's a character who looks suspiciously like John Travolta who's standing on a rug, and you rub his foot on the rug and he moves his hand near a doorknob, and if you have picked up a bunch of charges from the rug and get your hand really close to the doorknob, then John gets shocked and he says, "Gets out." And so I've been working on descriptions for that particular simulation to help someone who may not be able to see the screen while they're playing know what's happening. And it is a surprisingly challenging task. So using sounds, then also descriptions to help convey information.
That's so funny because not only is the challenging coming up with the sounds just in general to sound appropriate, you also have John Travoltage up there and describing the fact that it's John Travoltage and getting that across as well.
Well,
right, getting across the playfulness.
That isn't. I don't think they've ever seen. So they don't really have like an image in their mind, right?
Yeah, well,
but they've heard of them.
Yeah,
you're right.
An idea image,
a cultural reference. So even if you've never seen them.
I was gonna ask, do you guys use a program or do you record vocals for it? Like, is there like a program that you use to
a speech program?
A speech program?
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's a good question. So we do use like synthesized speech. So there are software programs called things like JAWS and NVDA that are screen readers. So we program the description in text into the simulation itself, and then people who use screen readers will use their screen reader to get that information. Or you can have it spoken out by the browser. There's a speech API that allows some browsers to also speak it, so you don't need special software.
Oh, that's cool.
So you get the kind of robot voice.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it probably makes it easier to make the simulation work a little bit faster or have less of a load when you offload some of that to the API for the browser. And I mean, it sounds like I don't know if it's something that's been done yet, but if you're using the API for the browser, I wonder if there's other programs that people might use that also utilize the browser to change the voice or make it more personable. So that it's something you have to worry about.
That's one of the benefits of coding the text straight in and then creating a way for it to interface with these other the browser or different screen reader software so that people can control, make it faster, slower, louder, softer, different voices, different accents, whatever works best for them.
That's cool. Yeah. I feel like I would just end up using it and giving it the funniest accent I could find.
Like Darth Vader.
Yeah, like Darth Vader, but really fast. just heavy breathing the whole time.
Yeah. And folks who use screen readers a lot tend to have them on a very high speed.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really amazing watching someone who's really fluid with the screen reader because they use a keyboard to control the screen reader. So then their hands are flying and then they're listening to the descriptions at 300 words a minute.
Wow.
So, yeah, you're like, I wrote those descriptions and I can't quite follow what's happening. So
well, hey, I mean that's a skill that is kind of partly out of necessity, but that's impressive for sure. All right, so as far as what we did this week, for the fourth time in a row, I really didn't play very many games besides Smash. We just recently picked up Nier Automata, which is a game that we talked about on a previous episode and played through, I think, the first hour and a half.
We're like 2 hours in. Yeah,
2 hours in. That game is a surprising set of mechanics and just storytelling. I don't know if people want to experience it themselves or not, but it has a very
I think it has one of those where discuss broad strokes, not specifics.
Yeah, basically it's one of those where the approach to telling the story is a bit different, and it kind of includes the player in a way where it's like a part of the world, and that you are the character, like in so much as even things like different screen options are things that you choose, but also affects the character. It's as if the character is choosing it as well.
Yeah, so like they have a part in the game where you have to turn on your brightness. And then they're like, "Oh, you need to adjust your brightness settings." And they have that in every game, right?
But they don't talk to you; they talk to the character.
Yeah. So they include all of and you can see like all the graphics options and everything like that, like low, medium, high graphics and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's just like if you're setting it up before you start the game.
But then they include it in like the storytelling aspect of the game, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you were saying when we were playing it, it's more so an RPG than what you were expecting.
Yeah. Because
previous games in this series weren't, well, I guess they were kind of RPG related, but the way it was kind of brought across was more of like I don't really know what type of fighting style that the game would be considered. It kind of meshes genres, but kind of comes across as more of an action-oriented game and less of these RPG elements where you can decide like stats and have different things that different swords are better than others because of how much damage they do. That type of depth wasn't expected from just what we saw.
And they even have
game.
like some weird moments where the way that the story usually they have RPGs and you have like you can pick your dialogue options and I want to say this and all this other shit. And I wasn't expecting this in this game at all because it has like a precise storyline, and usually games that have like storylines that are really like
honed in.
This is the story, and you're gonna just experience it kind of.
Yeah, it's like a more of a single path.
Linear. There you go. They just and all of a sudden it just throws you like a dialogue option. It's like, hey, you like pick your little dialogue option. I'm like, I'm gonna flirt with this dude because you play as a female.
Yeah.
And yeah, you had like one where it was like
I was like, that was interestingly telling there.
Yeah.
You have one where it's just like a basic like okay, and the other one's like I find your voice strangely soothing or something like that. You're like
I'm like, yeah, if I got the option.
Yeah,
this guy's cool.
But besides that, I mean,
we played like 30 minutes of a game called Brawl Out, which is basically a platform fighter, which is basically Smash.
Yeah. So all the Smash Bros. Games, the genre is called platform fighter because more games have been coming out that are like them because there's just a big community around it, and people have different ideas on how they approach or interpret certain game mechanics to make it different, or just kind of their own take on things. And I think this is the second major-ish one that's come out that we've kind of dipped our hands into, the previous being Rivals of Aether. Aether. It's Aether, and I can never figure out if it's Ether or Aether or Ether.
I say Aether. I don't give a shit.
My guess would be Aether, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's actually surprisingly, like, I had low expectations for how it would match up to Smash, although I try not to compare it too much because they're two different games.
Oh, that's what I do. I'm like, is this like Melee?
But I mean,
if it is, yeah. If it's not, well,
you're like, right away, I'm ranking you. I will use it.
And there are a lot of like mechanics changes, but overall, it's actually surprisingly fun. And when things hit, they feel like they hit hard, and it has good feedback from a playing standpoint as to how well you're doing. And the characters are actually interesting and not just like, oh, this guy swings a sword. Or this guy punches people. It's like there's a character where he plays the bongos, and then like a lightning cloud comes out and strikes the person.
You do like a little like drum solo, and you're like, bah, 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 bah.
Yeah,
so funny.
So that game's pretty cool, and we only played 30 minutes of it just because we had gotten near Automata, so we wanted to play that. But yeah, that's basically. I mean,
so I have a question. So what would have to happen for you guys to be like, oh my gosh, this is way better than Smash? I'm over Smash. We're doing this.
It would need to be challenging enough in the mechanics where you feel like you have a very strong control over everything the character does.
Yeah. So in Smash, the movement is basically the core of everything.
Yeah.
The movement feels so good and it's so fluid.
And you have control over every aspect.
Yeah, every aspect of the movement you have. Like if you want to use a move like back air, so basically it's like a kick behind you and you're in the air, so you can change the trajectory of where you're kind of falling and all that kind of stuff. And there's like a bunch of little mechanics where if you're on like a platform and there's like the ground, you can back air but then slide off the platform, and that like ends all your lag for that move,
which you usually land and then not be able to do something for like 5 to 6 frames or something like that. But if you hit the edge of the platform and slide off of it, it cancels all of your attack lag, and you just land normally.
And it has like a bunch of little characteristic movement options like that are really, really good.
Yeah, and it
has like a high skill ceiling, and it's still pretty easy for
beginners to play.
And
that high skill ceiling has a lot to do with those types of movements and
taking advantage of all those options.
Those little like intricate things that are difficult but rewarding, and once you have them, it's like it just feels really cool, because most games, when they come out with something, they try to simplify it as much as possible, and you kind of end up with whatever you're stuck with.
Like a watered down kind of thing.
Yeah, so okay, you move around, you're on the platform, you jump and you float through the air at this speed or something like that, or it's very controlled and you have to work within their game. But in Melee, Super Smash Bros. Melee specifically, there's a high level of control of what you're doing and when you're doing it, and that's what makes it so you can play what people would consider kind of a bad character or lower on whatever tier list they have of characters. But if you move well and you space your stuff well, you can still do it.
Yeah.
And some games, when they design it that way, if the character's bad, they're bad.
But anyways, back to the original question: what would dethrone? What would dethrone it? I mean,
I think the community would have a lot to do with it. Like, if there was a
like
large portion of people,
if there was a large portion of the Melee community that had like moved to this game, I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
but
it had to have a good player base for me to consider it. Even if it's a really good game, if nobody's playing it, then there's no.
Yeah, a lot of games like live and die like through their communities, and Melee is 15 years old. Like the game is 15 years old.
Oh,
it came out in 2001, I think.
Yeah, so actually 16 years.
Yeah.
Now.
And all of these like little tricks and movement options and stuff like that the developers they didn't put that in there purposely.
It's just the way the game
That's
engine
just the way
does it.
the game engine handles the stuff.
So people figured out the physics and like what they can kind of take advantage of.
Yeah.
And that's where that's opened up. And we're actually benefiting from little weird code errors, basically, that happen to be in the game. So when Smash 4 came out, the most recent edition of it, there's a lot of those types of things that are left out, although that game also has its own different things
it has
to take
its
advantage of.
own different type of movement options, and
So it still feels like Smash, just a little slower.
it's a little slower.
Yeah, but yeah, that's basically it. It has to have that level of control. Has to have a community worth actually joining, for it to be, I guess, enjoyable. But yeah, I think those two main things would be important to me. Also, interesting characters. Even if there's a huge community for some boring characters, I'm not going to play it.
Yeah, like I'm going to play as generic magician 2, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
or I could play, Fox.
Yeah.
Fox is a character.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was curious about exactly, how much of it was culture and the community, how much of it had to do with the actual gameplay, and how much had to do with the characters.
I think honestly, it's about 50-50, because the community around Melee is so like alive right now, because it has like a total resurgence, because it almost died like when
2008.
Yeah, like 2008 to like 2013.
Yeah, basically, the newer it goes Super Smash Bros. Melee, and then after that had come out, they came out with Brawl, which was the next game in the series, and a bunch of the people just moved to the new game. And this other, you would have assumed that since that happened, Melee just would have stopped, but it was kept alive by
Brawl was really bad.
But
it didn't have any of the cool mechanics or any of the. It has its own set of mechanics like Smash 4 does, but they introduced tripping, which is where if you move your character, you have a high chance to just trip.
Yeah,
you just fall.
If you're running around too much on the ground, your character
just
there's a
fall.
random chance for you to just like fall, and then
and then you get wrecked.
Yeah, because people take advantage of that because they're not.
So it was very anti-competitive.
Yeah, they purposely designed it so it would. This is just a party game, which is what the initial intention for Melee was just that it was a party game, but then kind of because it was so good and actually just had all the stuff to make it competitive, it just was.
Yeah.
But luckily with Smash 4, they've embraced the competitive nature of it. So.
Yeah.
And with that, Bros Melee with it too. But so moving on to our first topic of the day, we have the Two Worlds 2 DLC. Now, this game came out in 2011 in the U.S. You didn't select it, dude.
So weird.
It came out originally in 2011, and it's the second series in a game, Two Worlds, and then they announced Two Worlds 3, probably, I want to say back in March or so of last year. And at the same time that they also announced this particular DLC, and it was originally supposed to come out like Q2 of 2016, but they ended up pushing it back for Q2 of 2017. And this DLC, it's a big deal because the game's been out for 6 years, and it's the first DLC in a very long time, and it's actually it's more like an expansion pack. So the difference between a DLC and an expansion pack is DLCs can be small enough where it's like a map pack or something.
Yeah, it could be small, like, oh, you got new dress. And
yeah, it could be as small as literally just downloading a dress for your character or something like that.
But expansion packs are usually big, like probably around 10 hours or so.
Especially for
content.
RPGs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like a whole new area or like a new island or world to go to. And this one's an entirely like its own branching story within the same world, and it's so much so that if you own Two Worlds 2, you can buy the DLC expansion for $10. But if you don't own Two Worlds 2, it's not required. You can just buy a standalone expansion version of it, where you just play the new. Which
is basically they just sell you the expansion pack,
and it's playable by itself, which is not usual, because most of the time when you release an expansion, it's not playable by itself because it relies on the engine of the previous one. But they actually supposedly revamped their entire game engine to kind of update it for newer systems. And so in doing that, I'm assuming it made it a lot easier to make it a standalone.
They probably built it in the new engine as a test.
Yeah.
I bet you.
And I have
Look
a
at that.
feeling that a lot of the
Insider knowledge.
well, I have a feeling that the Two
Furrowed
Worlds 3,
brow there.
Two Worlds 3, their engine might be similar.
I'm sure it's the same.
So they're using this as like a way to kind of get something built in the engine, give people more content for this, as a way to advertise the next game that's coming out to keep it in people's minds.
Yeah.
So this 10 plus hours of new content, whole new area, whole new storyline, and oh, by the way, our number 3 in the series is coming out, like next year.
Yeah.
Or so.
What is really weird to me that as to why they would make a Two Worlds 3, because why not just make a new IP?
Oh, like a new game?
Yeah, why not make a new game?
After such a long time?
Yeah.
I maybe they're like, there's more story here.
I mean, that's true. Two Worlds could have ended on a cliffhanger. I don't know.
And as we've learned from the Nier franchise, you can have sequels to games that are wildly different in the way that they play. And a lot of game series are doing this as well, where the first one in the series will have a different play style or be a little bit different mechanically than the second one in the series. And the only thing that really connects them is just the overall worlds and storyline. Because the difference between Nier and Nier Automata is they're basically like in a totally different setting. Like one's more fantasy, where there's some weird stuff that happens, and then in Nier Automata it's like science fiction.
Yeah.
So but it's still, it's like thousands of years in the future or something like that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But so maybe Two Worlds 3 will have a similar gameplay, or it'll just be a continuation. But I don't know a whole lot about Two Worlds, and I didn't realize that it was as big as it was.
The original Two Worlds was not crowned, but was said to be the Oblivion Killer, which was like a big RPG back in the day, back in like 2005
I don't even know when Oblivion came
or
out.
4 or something like that. So Two Worlds comes out and they're like, yeah, we're so much better than Oblivion, and then they like totally sucked. Like the game sucked dick.
Yeah,
real bad. It
had a lot of like control issues and it optimization issues, and it just didn't run well, and
it was just a bad game.
And it was just a bad game. And then they came out with Two Worlds 2, and apparently that one was a success.
Yeah, it sold quite well, like over 3 million copies in like
the first like period.
Yeah,
of,
the fiscal year or something, which is a pretty big amount.
Yeah. So I mean, I am actually kind of interested
good
in
on
playing.
them for being like, oh man, our first game sucked so bad. Let's make a second one.
Yeah,
and then they're like, yeah, the second one didn't get horrible reviews, didn't get like 10s, got like 7s. So our trend is going up. So Two Worlds 3. Look at this trajectory. It's simple math, folks. It's simple math. We're getting 9s or 10s.
Well, that's actually a good thing to point out, is if they're coming out with this DLC expansion, are people going to rate the game or the expansion on how good it is based on their own enjoyment of the previous game? Or are they going to kind of rate it on its own?
I'm sure they'll be like...
There's going to be some rose-tinted glasses.
Well, no, I think it's going to be... It's so long, people have forgotten.
I think they're probably getting a lot of people to replay it or play through it for the first time, maybe. I mean, it made me want to play it for some weird reason, and I never had a want to play it in the past. I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. New engine, maybe it won't be crap.
Yeah, that's my first thought when you said that you didn't have to play. You could play this expansion pack separately. Than Two Worlds 2. Like maybe they kind of want people to do that and be like, let's not think about that one too much. Let's think about this new thing.
Look at what we're doing now.
Yeah.
No, we don't have a past. This is the
Bring
present.
on the 8s.
Yeah, and so this game, this expansion / standalone possible thing is coming out May 25th. So they announced it last year around the same time, a couple months earlier in 2016, and now they're finally finishing it, and they have an actual date for it this time. Instead of just saying Q2, it's May 25th of this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that performs, and I'm interested in playing it. And I talked about it, I'm like, hey, why don't we just play through Two Worlds 2, and then when the expansion comes out, then we'll play through that. And Matt's like, why? So
if you know better is coming, maybe we'll just wait.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So they started describing or saying this was coming out early in 2016. Is that right?
Yeah.
You just said. So who has the best hype structure? Like,
To
who
get,
does hype for new games the best?
Bethesda.
I think Bethesda does hype really well.
Bethesda is the game studio that came out
With Oblivion.
With Oblivion, and then the game after that came out was Skyrim, which is in the same series, the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, and so it's the Elder Scrolls series. They also came out with Fallout 3. They published Fallout New Vegas, and then they came out with Fallout 4. And Fallout 4 is a game that just recently came out that had the biggest hype imaginable. And if you want to do hype, you just study what they did, and it's the best way to go about it. You never want to, kind of what I feel like you were alluding to, announce something a year ahead of time, or announce something and be like, yeah, it's going to come in the next couple of months or so, and then have it, oh no, we're going to push it back.
So
because then people will just
what
not care
Bethesda
anymore.
is they're like, okay, the game is like, it's done. The game's pretty much done.
Yeah, and this is when they announced it.
Yeah. So they announced it 6 months prior to release, which was, we're going to show footage, we're going to do all this other stuff, we're going to do marketing, we're going to do all this other stuff. And then they, like 6 months, that's all you have to wait. That's it.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, holy fucking shit, 6 months? Oh, we didn't even know this game was in development. And we're going to get it in 6 months? Oh my, this is the best.
And then on top of that, when they announced it, I'm not sure if it was when they announced it or if it was, I think it might have been the same day, they also released a mobile game.
Oh yeah, they released a mobile game, a mobile tie-in, which was like a little
like a little management game.
Yeah, like a little sim management game.
Yeah, so they released this tie-in that is within
and it was
the
actually
same
pretty
world,
good. People loved it.
And it was free to play, and they didn't just announce the tie-in like, yeah, we're going to be coming out with this thing soon. They released it, it went live on the iOS store right after
they were
the
like,
live stream.
It's coming. And they're like, oh shit, you can go download that shit right now.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then when the game came out,
The internet crashed.
yeah, basically. I immediately downloaded it. I was so in the hype zone. I was just like, yeah. As it turns out, once you put 20 hours into this management game, which isn't that long considering it's a management game,
You're
it's like,
hours
wow.
later.
Yeah, it's like, well, there's not much further you can go because the game's kind of designed to just kind of keep going. Mm-hmm. So after you get to a certain point, it's like, well, okay, there's no challenge really, but it was really cool when it first came out.
Yeah.
And on top of that, then they also included this other DLC, not DLC, but this other app tie-in for the game where if you play the game, you could have your phone out and you could
navigate menus and stuff like that through your phone.
Yeah,
and
the game menus, like your inventory and the items you have, because it's an RPG. You wouldn't even have to go into the menus in the game itself. You could have your phone off to the side and just, okay, I want to use I want to heal myself, or I want to change my weapon, and you could do it on your phone, and it would tie in over the network in your house, and then it would just work.
Which is a cool gimmick, not practical.
It wasn't that practical.
No, because in the game you're like, why would I ever both my hands are on the controller.
We used it.
Yeah, we used it.
And I would control the menus.
I'm very good with my feet.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, Matt would play, and then I would have it up, and then I'd be like,
heal me.
That's, the other thing was be like, hey, dude, change this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it had some funny moments because we actually recorded it and we used some capture software to capture what was going on my phone and had it up in the screen. So if you guys are interested, you can watch our Fallout 4 playthrough, and that has it in there. But
perhaps I shall.
Be forewarned, there's no ending. It just ends because we just stopped playing. But it's like a good 30, 40 episodes, so you're fine.
Yeah, you're good.
But anyways, so
I would say they do hype. Recently, they've done hype the best.
Yeah.
Where they're like, yo, the game is done. We're going to do 6 months of PR, basically, and then you're going to buy it.
Yeah. And they also limited what they showed you, too. They kind of, gave it to you piecemeal. They didn't tell you everything that it did right away. They kind of and then we're going to talk about this next time, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the same publishing house, Bethesda. They also published another game called Doom, which was the Doom 2016, where they took the original Doom game and they're reimagining it for today's world. And they also did a very short announce release kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it worked out just as well. And that game was amazing. Probably like the best single player first person shooter game ever.
I wouldn't say ever, but yeah.
Ever.
Okay. Ever. But yeah, they do hype the best, I think. A lot of game companies, they'll fall into this trap where they're like, yeah, we're doing this crazy cool game, and then, but like, it's just an idea right now. We don't actually have anything.
Yeah.
It's just an idea. Also, like, here's like some concept art. But like, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And then like 14 years later, they're like, yeah, we're releasing this game.
Okay,
Yeah, you heard
that's
about
just
it.
Duke Nukem Forever. That's the only game that has happened with. This is a real story. Like they went and decided to make a new Duke Nukem game called Duke Nukem Forever, like 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah,
Little
like in
did
the
they
90s.
know
Yeah, like
it
in the
was going
90s.
to
And
stand
then,
forever.
yeah.
Duke Nukem, you'll wait forever.
Yeah, and yeah, they announced it in the 90s, and then it went into like what they call development hell, where nobody was able to make it, and then when they finally came out with it, it was
like-
disappointing.
Like 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, they finally released in 2009, and
It was bad.
A lot of the ideas for how to go about certain
We're very 90s.
were very 90s ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The graphics were okay, but the overall gameplay and stuff like that was like, wow.
But yeah, so
Wow.
yeah, get the most hype you announce when it's like short time frames, basically. That way, there's no die off, because you like I think anything more than 6 months you have die off where you're like, no one gives a shit, like it's not in their mind. So then you have to redo it, and then you have to spend more money on like.
And if you say the same information twice,
Right,
people
yeah.
are less interested. So you have to like reserve information to get people hyped about the game. The second time you go and decide to tell them about it. So that's a challenge to find out what's the best way to reintroduce people. Like, hey, we're still here and it's coming out soon, and look at all this cool stuff we have in the game. And also take what you said before a year or two ago and actually produce it, because a lot of people make promises when they're like, yeah, we're gonna make this
the
game, it's gonna have
internet
all this cool
loves
stuff.
to remember. They'll be like, yeah, you can visit planets. It has 13 quintillion planets, and you get to the game, it has like 14 planets. People are like, look at this article. You said right here
13
that
quintillion planets.
we want 13 quintillion, not 14. 14 is less than 13 quintillion.
And then, of course, the developer's like, well, it was just, it was in the idea stages or whatever. Yeah, well, don't promise it if you're not going to do it, man.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of famous games that we could go into, like an hour discussion of famous scenarios where they promised things and they didn't go through with them. And the game, luckily, in some cases was still okay, but was overall, like, if you went in with an expectation and then you're waiting all this amount of time, and then when they finally release it or they finally have their last thing, it's like, oh, no, actually, it's this. The graphics are actually... We weren't able to make the graphics as good as we said we would.
It's basically...
Stuff like that.
It's stick figures now.
Yeah, it's so basically we lost budget, and now we just had our artist draw each frame in stick figures, and it's just a movie. It's just a stick figure movie. You can find it on Stick Figure
It's just
Death
an
Theater.
animation now.
Yeah,
It's just an animation.
Yeah, it's just on stickdeath.com now.
Thank you for your pre-orders.
Yeah. Oh my God, pre-orders. Anyways, we'll get into that in a second. Let's move on to our next topic, because we kind of, we had a long conversation about that. But I'm going to go into the Let's Play tip of the episode, of the podcast, of the day. And it's my own tip, which is, it has to do with thumbnail art for videos on YouTube, or really anything that you have to create a thumbnail for. So I'm hoping to get through this a little bit quickly. I did write down some notes on how I would go about this. And I put it into 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let me go through this quickly.
4.
He has like 4 paragraphs.
Well, you're not
like
making it quicker, dude.
About
You're
18
not making it
sentences.
Well, I'm going to zip it so that I am not slowing it down.
Okay, so there's 4 main sections to this. You have size is important, and this is size in between things. Positioning within the thumbnail is important. Yes, size is important. Colors and tone are important, and the simpler, the better. So what I mean by those is, when I talk about size, when you're making a thumbnail for YouTube...
Like, slow it down.
Okay,
son.
I'm projecting,
You're
man.
talking very quickly.
Okay.
People want to be able to process
That's
the
true, that's
information.
true. So when you're talking about size and you want to put a thumbnail on YouTube, the optimal, like what you want to shoot for is 1280 by 720. You don't really want to go any higher than that. You would think, why don't I do like a 1080p thumbnail? Well, the thumbnail's like this big on the screen.
You ever seen 1080p scrunched up into 2x3 pixels?
Yeah, it
looks like shit.
Yeah, it has the potential where if you put a 1080p image in on a 1080p thing, like say your background is an actual image that's 1080p, you're going to be seeing less details anyways. So you want to have something that's in the middle, and 720 is kind of what I stuck with, and it always looks good. And I think it's almost like a standard when you're making it. But of course, whatever works for you is best. And then as far within the category of size, text size is very important. You want to be able to read it. And you want to be able to read it when it's really small on the screen, when it's actually a thumbnail. If it's readable on your monitor, blown up in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever you use to make this stuff, it's not likely to be visible there unless you take that into account. And then also,
what we like to do is zoom way out.
Yeah.
When we're on Photoshop, we zoom way out.
And so we'll see it at the actual size, and then we'll know, okay, you actually can't read this, because colors fuse together if you squish it. And if you don't properly pay attention to the colors and the size, then you could find out that you can't even, it's just a white block of text in some cases. And then the other thing to pay attention to with size is your primary focus of what you want your thumbnail to be about, whether or not it's the game logo that you happen to be playing a game for, or if it's your channel logo, you want to be able to see that clearly as well. So
you want eye-catching.
Yeah, eye-catching. When I'm talking about position, people read right to left. So usually you'd want to put your most important information or whatever you want to say first on... Wait, they read left to right. People read left to right, so you want to put all your most important information on the left-hand side. And you don't have to necessarily follow that 100%, but it's just kind of a good guideline. If you have like a title... you don't want to put your title on the far right-hand side, which I guess would be this for people watching us on the stream. But because people are going to be seeing all the other information and then coming over to the title, and you want to be able to people to just glance at it and know what it's about.
You want to kill it right from the start.
Yeah, exactly. And then be mindful of the time marker on the video. So on YouTube, overlaid on top of your thumbnail, there's a little time marker that tells people how long the video is. That will cover up stuff. And if you put text in the bottom right-hand corner, people will not be able to see what it is. And definitely don't put a long bottom banner because half of whatever you're trying to say is also going to be covered up as well. And the time marker is different sizes depending on when you're looking at it. If it's in your subscription queue, it'll be a different size than when you're looking at it, say, in like a playlist. So it's just give it a wide berth, basically. Now, when talking about colors, I'll try and make this one short because I wrote down way too much information. Limit the amount of main colors in your design to 3 main colors. So I want to do a light blue and a dark red and black, and just like leave it at that. Of course, images having to do with the game, those don't have to necessarily cover that. Although if you want to keep like a consistent look, then try to match your colors kind of a little bit to that, or have it purposely contrast so things stick out as in comparison to whatever image you're using. But you don't want to have too many colors, because then everything clashes or has a higher chance of clashing, and then people aren't getting the immediate information that you want them to get.
They're thinking, man, this thumbnail sucks.
Yeah, basically.
Why would I ever click this? Look how bad his thumbnail is.
Yeah.
I do that. I'll judge.
Yeah. No, honestly, like I'll upload it, and then Matt the next day will be like, this looks terrible. I'm like, I thought it looked cool. Just because it looks cool in whatever program you're using, when it gets uploaded, things change, and it goes right into the next thing, which is avoid dark colors. Avoid lots of dark colors, because, like, say you want to use, I want to use the galaxy as the background. Like, put the Milky Way galaxy as the background of my thumbnail. And if that picture is too dark, if a lot of the elements of it, I mean, it'll look really cool and moody when you're looking at here, like, man, that really fits the game.
Look, I'm like spacey, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm so ascended. I'm so woke.
But then when you put it up on YouTube, you don't even see the galaxy. That's how bad it is. It will it'll just wash out, and you'll be like, I think that's a galaxy, but nobody will ever see it. So when you're making the thumbnail, it needs to be eye-catching. It needs to be brighter is better, and you need to. Oh my God! The third thing I was going to say just went away. Eye-catching, brighter is better, and you need a good contrast for when you place like text over things, and you want the background to be either a completely different color than what the text is, or just put like a black border on the text so people can see it in contrast to whatever you have as the background.
I say we spend about, on every brand new thumbnail that we make, probably spend like an hour trying to design one that is cohesive.
And that's a
it's
short
good.
amount of time compared to when we first started, because we've come up with workflows and stuff like that. But we still spend like an hour just coming up with like the idea for what the colors are going to be, and how big something's going to be, and just the vision of what we want first, and then I go in and try to put it together. Kind of a small tip: instead of plain white for text, or anything else that is going to be just a plain white, try just making it slightly off-white. And the reason for this is when people just see like a straight up just plain white something, it looks very cheap. So making it slightly off-white gives it kind of a more filtered look, and it because white does just like boom out from stuff a lot more than other colors. Making it slightly off-white kind of attenuates that and makes it easier to kind of see it as a whole picture, instead of just like, oh yeah, this cool picture and this huge white thing in the middle. And then the last kind of section is the simpler the better. So avoid applying more than 2 different fonts within the same image. To
basically make sure it looks cohesive.
Yeah, make sure it looks cohesive. Limit the amount of text, because the more words you try to put on the screen, the less you're likely to make anything readable on the screen. Limit the amount of total things, like elements entirely, that you have. And a good way to think about it is separating a thumbnail into sections. So you have background, like, okay, what am I doing for the background? And then you have your primary focus, so like your logo or the title card or whatever it is. And you have episode number, if you happen to have an episode number. Take that as its own section to really look at that. And then maybe 1 or 2 more accents, and like a picture of you reacting to something in the game or something like that can
Don't do that.
And well, it can be an accent. It really depends on what your goal is.
I hate those people.
Yeah, but some people, it's kind of like a weird, ironic, funny thing.
I don't think it's ironic or funny.
Matt doesn't like it. That's his own tastes. It does work for some people, especially if you are the brand. It might be something important to you to put your face in there, so people will instantly know
I'm not going to
this
buy
is your
their
video.
brand.
But Matt over here is being anti-brand right now. Of course, any of these particular tips, if it doesn't fit with what you're going for, and you can still read stuff, and it still gets the job done, you don't have to follow any particular one of them.
Let me just undermine my whole point.
Well, no, I'm not trying to undermine it. I'm saying these aren't hard rules. These are just kind of like things to think about.
Guidelines.
Yeah. And then lastly, I'll just do some workflow tips. What Matt said before, zoom out from the thumbnail to get an idea of what it looks like on there. Even like save it as a JPEG and then put it on,
okay, we get it.
on the computer and do that. Well, because in programs like Photoshop, the entire thing's like gray, so you're not seeing it against something white. So you don't know when you have a small black box of thumbnails on a white background. The white makes everything look darker in contrast to it. So you need to take that into account, because I made things that I thought was just bright enough and looked really cool, and then it's still too dark. You still can't see anything on it when it eventually gets uploaded, and I have to redo it and re-upload. Assume the thumbnail will appear darker than you expect, just like I said. Make your decisions prior to going in there, so you have an idea of what you're doing, so you're not dicking around. Look at other people's thumbnails for inspiration. And lastly, this is a classic design rule. Look it up if you want more information, but apply the rule of thirds. And what that means is, if you imagine, like, if you look at our webcam, imagine like 3 equally sized boxes across the top, 3 equally sized boxes across the middle, and 3 equally sized boxes across the bottom. Use the lines intersecting those areas as guidelines. So if you want a title at the top, then imagine they're all equally sized. You put the title in the upper third. If you want to have like a game character in there, you don't want it to be in the middle. You can put it like on the right third of the image. And what this does is it makes it much more appealing to look at, and nothing is getting in the way of anything else. So those are my basic tips. It's actually basic. And I went on a little longer than I expected, but yeah, I mean, that's how you make a thumbnail, and that's kind of what I have to say about that. But moving on to the next topic, we have, so these are kind of 2 things in one. We wanted to have kind of a discussion about publishers and development and accessibility in gaming, and mostly based off of some questions that Emily had in regards to that.
How do you spell publication?
Okay, so take
God.
the L out, dude.
What? Oh yeah, I'm such an idiot.
So what kind of interest do you have about publishing and development or even accessibility in gaming?
Fluber. Sorry.
Fluber.
Spencer, slightly distracted.
No, yeah, it looks like almost like plumber. But what specific kind of things were you interested in regards to?
Oh yeah, so I think different funding. So for the work that I do, it's we have certain funding models that we use to make educational games and educational simulations. And so I'm always interested in learning about other people's approaches to this, because there are challenges with all of them. There can always use more money to make more cool things. So
yeah.
So in the world that I spent most of my time in, we fund our work with grants and foundation funds. So we write proposals and ask, for example, the National Science Foundation for grant funds to create educational resources. And then we also go to organizations that are started by philanthropists who want to benefit education. And we ask them to please give us some money to make more educational resources.
Yeah.
So that's mostly how my work gets funded.
So do the people who fund the work, do they have any influence on how the work is presented other than...
like the end product?
Yeah. Because like developers and publishers, the publishers will have sway over what's in a game.
Yeah.
So do the people who fund you have any sway over shit that is specific into the simulation?
Like the way it looks? Or...
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's usually not. I mean, you can have arrangements. So this isn't across the board for all educational game groups. But for most of the funding relationships that we have, we propose to the organization, we want to make some math simulations that are focused on pre-algebra level, or we want to make chemistry simulations that are focused on general chemistry level.
Where
topics.
the hell were those when I was in high school?
Exactly. So lucky those of you that are going through Gen Chem now, because we have these cool resources. So we'll propose a specific range of topics, and then we have a design, we have a look and feel to our simulations. We have a certain approach to them that people know and like. And so, people kind of get the basic idea of what it is that we'll create. Then they say yes, and then we get the funds, and then we make a series of resources. So they get some say in the sense of, yes, make chemistry simulations, or yes, make math simulations. But they don't, it's not like, we're meeting with them regularly and then they're saying like, oh, move this character over here, or make this, make this cannon shoot Toyotas instead of whatever, right?
Yeah. We wanted people to know that our Toyotas are cannon proof.
Exactly.
So I guess you kind of sell what the concept is and what the approach is, but the actual content itself is more your decision.
All in your control. Have you guys ever had any funding and then you guys make something and then the people who fund it are like, what the fuck is this? This is not what we thought this was, or anything like that?
No. I mean, we have had some relationships where it was a little bit more specific, like rather than saying a math simulation or a chemistry simulation, it was like, you're going to make an earth science simulation that's on plate tectonics. And in that, that's happened a few times. In those situations, we did work more closely to make sure that, the scope of the simulation that we were creating matched the scope that they had in mind. But it still wasn't like, okay, change this color here, or, it wasn't that level of detail. But no, people really like our simulations. So.
Okay. I mean, when you...
We've never had anyone be like, oh, John Travolta, it's terrible.
Tacky.
Right.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, are there any like when you make a decision or talk with a foundation about coming up with something like that, are the timelines similar to anything else? Like, okay, we're going to give you 4 months to work on this, or how does that part work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So so grant funding is usually on a 2 or 3 year cycle. So technically you get allocated the funds on a yearly basis, but okay, I'll have this budget this year and this budget the next year and this budget the third year. So you have 3 years to do all the stuff that you proposed. Foundations are usually a little shorter than that. Some of them are on a 3 year cycle. Some of them are more on a 1 year cycle or a 3 year cycle, but you have to do a 1 year review.
To see if you can
check
continue.
on things.
Yeah.
Like a progress report.
So it's a pretty, kind of looking broadly in the gaming community, 3 years I think is reasonable. And we'll make a lot of resources, right? So that's not to make one simulation. That'll be to make, anywhere from 3 to 10 simulations, depending on what we're trying to do.
Okay. And I guess as long as you either come out with it, each simulation semi-regularly, or as long as you hit the end goal by the end of the period, then it's probably fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if you have an agreement ahead of time, like we're going to fund you for 3 years, there's never a case where they're like, actually, could you make this a little bit faster? Or is that something that you run into at all?
No. The only time anything close to that can happen is sometimes we'll get, just depending on the organization and how they usually allocate their funding, you might get, yes, we're going to fund you. You gave us a 3 year proposal. We're going to fund the first 2 years of that. And then the third year is contingent on how things go in the first 2 years.
Okay.
And so we've never run into any problems with that. But then, it is a case where you're not guaranteed that third year.
That makes
so
sense.
You kind of have to operate under the assumption that you may not get that.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we are trying out some new funding models that I think, do have some relationship to the broader gaming community. So our simulations are used in classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Our simulations are also all free and open source. And so third-party users, publishing companies, have been using them and incorporating them into their resources for a long time. And we're perfectly happy with that happening. There's some benefits to us for that as far as dissemination.
Mm-hmm.
People know them and use them and like them, and they don't necessarily have to get them from our website. They could just happen upon them somewhere else, so that's good.
Yeah.
But there are some things that, for example, publishing companies or assessment, so people who make big exams, there are things that those folks are interested in that, say, teachers and students in the classroom might not be. So one thing would be being able to collect a bunch of data. So when people are using a simulation, what are they doing and how are they doing it? And if you give them a problem to solve and they need to use the simulation to try and figure something out, technically you can collect all the clicks and use learning analytics and understand how they went about solving this problem. And teachers in the classroom and the students themselves don't care about those sorts of things. They just want to solve the problem, or the teacher wants the kids to solve the problem. But publishing companies would like to know how people are doing that so that they can create...
Tailor-make shit.
Right. They can tailor things and also use some analytics to kind of give the student or teachers kind of a big picture look at how the student is doing.
Yeah.
So are they having problems in this area or this other area? And they can gain some information about that based on what a student does in a simulation. So we're creating something. So our simulations are called PhET, interactive simulations. So PHET.
Does that stand for anything?
Yeah. So when the project first started, it was started by Nobel Prize winner Carl Wyman. And it was in the physics department. And he's a physicist.
That makes sense.
So it started out as physics education technology. So that's where PhET came from, although we've now since expanded into lots of other disciplines. So we've kind of dropped the meaning, but we kept the name.
That tends to happen sometimes where, the original one, but then you're just like, okay, now we're just PhET. Like that's our name now.
That's our
just
brand.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now we created these resources called Bet.io simulations. So they're interoperable simulations. And the idea is to license these versions of bet simulations that have special interoperability features to publishing companies and assessment organizations and other big companies that would make use of that data. And then that would be kind of at a pay per student.
A contract or a subscription based.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of makes sense as far as a logical next step in trying to spread it and take advantage of those types of resources. As far as I guess entertainment based games are concerned, there are some I guess particular ways of going about that are similar to that, but a lot of the time, and I'm speaking specifically about subscriptions or things like that. You have massive multiplayer online games that are strictly based in subscriptions, or games that aren't just like one storyline. They're like more how'd you say multiplayer based that also work off subscriptions, and those are not I think a lot of entertainment games have moved away from that because people are less likely to pay a subscription to take advantage of those particular games.
Yeah, if a game has a subscription, it doesn't do well in today's kind
market
of economy.
Yeah, a lot of games are
WoW
going...
does it well because WoW's like...
It's an older game.
It has an install base of like 6 million or some shit like that.
It has a tenure that allows it to kind of continue to do what it has been doing. But any newer games that come out, a lot of games have been going for a free-to-play model.
Which is basically you're like, yeah, you can, like, it's free, but then like also if you want to play like the whole game, you have to pay.
Yeah.
Where they'll lock certain features behind paywalls. They're like, yeah, you can have like 6 inventory slots, but if you want 17... you pony up $2.99. That's what we.
Yeah, they'll either do it in small ways like that, or they'll do it as like you can play for free, but you only get access to the first section of the game, or you could pay the full price for the game. It either ends up being something like that, or the game is technically free, but you can buy items that have no real like
cosmetics.
Yeah, the other cosmetic items like you can buy a hat for your character that says something funny, or
I got a pirate hat. Oh, $4.99. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, or like an entirely different skin, so an entirely different like outfit or look for a particular character will cost an amount.
Kind of free to play models make money.
Yeah, and that's how they make money is off of that, as well as I'm sure other kind of
mostly by
stuff.
Locking features behind doors though. And
then the other main one is one-time fee type scenarios, and some games have been kind of dabbling in where they'll make it free at first and the game's in active development, and then when the game finally releases, there will be a price. And people have to pay
like a beta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's like a long-term open beta where they'll work out all the kinks there.
So how often does that work out? How often does it crash and burn? Because like maybe if you play the beta a bunch, but it wasn't the world's best game ever, that you're like, meh, and now I'm done.
In our experience, I would say it's like 50-50.
Yeah, I think
where at the end of the beta, I was like, yeah, I'll pick it up. Or at the end of the beta, I'm like, this game fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This is not a good thing I didn't drop $60.
Yeah, I think
it's not for me.
Yeah. It's just this is not my type of game. I think it does have some. I can't think of the words I want to say. It depends somewhat on also how long the beta is, and how far before the game's final release you start the beta. And some companies, which I think is a little bit smarter, they'll have like closed beta, where they'll have just specific people who they get randomly chosen through like a newsletter, or sometimes you can buy into a beta, which I don't really fully agree with. But basically, you'll pay either a smaller portion of what the total game cost is, or pay the total game cost up front, with the chance to play the beta and then get the full release game.
A lot of games are nowadays they'll have a thing called early access, which is basically you're buying the game in beta basically, and it's not feature complete. It doesn't have like all the shit, but they're selling it to you for the full price, and they're like,
With the
when
promise.
it releases, then you'll get it. But give us money now, and you can play like our beta or whatever.
Yeah, and that's kind of an alternate way of going about building a Kickstarter for a game. So when you do a Kickstarter, you sell the game to the people, like, hey, this is what the game's going to be. We're going to come out with it in a year. We just need some money to get it done because we don't have a publisher to give us money for it. And in an early access game, it's, hey, we don't have a publisher. Give us the money now, and you can play it while it's being developed. But there have been many games where they have never left early access. They've never been fully released, or they'll oftentimes be abandoned completely.
Yeah.
Basically, people will play it, they'll get their fill of the game, and usually they're multiplayer games or things that have high replayability. And people are like, okay, I'm done with this game. And then the developers are like, well, should we finish the game? Or sometimes they'll just take the money and then purposely not finish the game. Well, not purposely, not publicly.
Some of them do that.
Yeah, well, I can't say that without them, without looking.
Allegedly.
You just bought them out of that gig.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, that does happen, and there are some shady groups that kind of make like a half
a
game.
cash grab, basically.
And like, okay, here's a game, guys. So it's early access. We're gonna do all this cool stuff. Great, now we have the money. Let's go make something else. Yeah. But getting to the point that I was talking about before, I just wanted to finish that. They'll do a closed beta for a game, and then they'll end the closed beta. And then there will be a period of time where they fix whatever problems they found in that beta, and then they'll have an open beta a little bit closer to release. That's a short time frame. It's like a weekend or a week, and then that gives people a chance to play the game. And usually, if it's a large multiplayer game, they'll be doing things like testing servers and stuff like that in that particular one to see how many people they can get on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is how often is it really serving as a testing beta versus just getting some hype and generating some funds?
Yeah, exactly. In those cases, that is oftentimes the case. Most like single player games or games that aren't multiplayer based, you won't see hardly any betas for the game. If there's kind of an existing fan base, there might be a short beta or like with Mass Effect Andromeda, they released the first, was it 5 hours of the game?
10 hours.
10 hours of the game.
10-hour trial.
A 10-hour trial just before the game came out for free, and then...
Not for free. You had to be in Origin Access.
Oh, member, I'm sorry.
Which is $4.99 a month.
That's correct. I was wrong about that. But
I know.
If you're part of Origin Access and you're paying the subscription fee, you would have access to this limited time 10-hour trial of the game before it released, and then it releases, then you have to pay full price. But primarily it's multiplayer games, it's testing servers, and if it's a competitive game, it's testing balance and stuff like that. And those games actually, deserve to have that type of beta build, because you need to, you want to be able to release and have it be like, hey, this is the game. You don't want to be, oh crap, the servers suck, or we weren't expecting this many players, or turns out the shotgun is way too overpowered and everyone just gets killed super easy and it's not fun for the people getting killed. Usually it's pretty fun if you're the one killing them.
Yeah, if you have the shotgun, it's great. No, it is the best game ever.
But I wanted to move over because we're getting close to the end of the podcast, and I know you wanted to talk about accessibility in gaming. So what types of questions did you have about that as far as, I guess, mainstream entertainment-based games?
Yeah, so I was curious about what accessibility... what do people talk about with respect to accessibility? Because I've seen some examples where people have made videos showing how unusable some accessibility features are. So even when they're implemented, they're not actually being very effective.
Yeah. I think that has a lot to do with it doesn't seem to be a major focus. And
I think nowadays it's becoming more of a focus.
Yeah.
But
and also,
why do you think that is?
Well, honestly, I feel like people don't put the time into to research what needs to be done to accommodate those types of features. So, someone like, I want to do something for colorblind people, and then unless they really, talk to somebody who knows how that works and come up with a creative solution for it, it might not work out perfectly because they're just a game designer. And I feel like a lot of research hasn't been done on behalf of the developers to be able to implement it. And if one developer does the research for it and they do it well, they're not likely to tell the other developers how they got it done, which is possibly another issue in mind. But there are some third-party stuff going on for accessibility in games, much like in everything else. On the computer, you were talking about the browser for the speech. I actually looked up a bit and found a website that lists a bunch of interesting accessibility, and it's mostly kind of peripherals, like special controllers for people who have maybe their right hand isn't as good as their left hand, so they want to have more stuff over on the right hand side, or vice versa. But there are, the particular website, if anybody's interested, it's called Evil Controllers, and it offers different controllers for gamers with a disability. But then there's also Natural Point. They make a head tracker that kind of talks to the game and uses whatever current key layout that the game uses, but then tries to make some of those movements be controlled by the head if you have limited usability. And there are third-party groups kind of filling in that void for the time being, but I mean, you are correct in assuming and hearing that in most games when they get developed, there isn't a big...
Yeah, but I think she asked like 10 years ago why the trend is heading upwards.
Oh, why it's heading upwards?
Yeah.
Well, I in my opinion, because I really don't know for sure, I'm not going off of an article or anything like that, and I'm not sure if you share my opinion, but the fact that these third-party groups are coming out with this focus, and people are creating communities around this type of thing, it creates more of an awareness of the importance, or how many people do need this type of thing. People might have thought, oh, there's not that many colorblind people in the world.
Well, I think it has more to do with the people with these certain disabilities are going into they're building games.
That's true too.
They're influencing design decisions, or they're going into
I want to make a game that works with my disability.
Yeah.
I
think they're the ones driving the force.
Yeah, because there's an indie game scene that is more open than ever before when it comes to being able to make a game and put it online. So the accessibility of being able to make a game yourself and do things yourself and fill those gaps that you feel like aren't being filled, then there are people who specifically make games for that. And in fact, I actually follow someone on YouTube who specifically makes games just around a particular language, I think it's Ensanto or something like that. There's no games in Ensanto, so she's making a bunch of games in Ensanto.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
It's a constructed language.
Oh, it's a constructed language, yeah.
Yeah, it's a simplified
well,
constructed
alrighty
language.
then.
Yeah, it's being taught in schools to act as a bridge between English and other languages.
I don't care.
But yeah, so those are the types of things that I feel like are happening to make that better, and I hope they go that route. It should be one of those things.
It should be, because we're playing Nier Automata, right? And this game has millions and millions of dollars of development costs and everything like that, and these motherfuckers know nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing, not even a colorblind mode. Nothing. They're like, yeah, you can pick the brightness in the game and stuff like that, and it's built into the storyline, but no colorblind mode, just in case. You're like, you have time.
I mean, honestly, you have to twist
you have
people's...
the money, kind of. I assume you made a lot of money.
Yeah, you have to twist people's arms just to have options for just regular game options. Oh, I want to have a way of controlling, the field of view. Is a big one. Some games just don't have a way of you changing the field of view, and for some people, if it's too narrow of a field of view and you're playing something that's in first person,
you get nauseous.
And some people just have that problem. So they want to have a wider field of view so they don't feel like they're enclosed. But there are some games that they just don't do that. I
definitely think, though, the trend is heading upwards. You have major publishers like Blizzard who publish and make their own games, add colorblind mode. WoW has a colorblind mode.
Yeah, Blizzard makes
WoW has some disability things. I think they have a speech thing as well.
Yeah, they have a bunch of stuff that they've added to it. Because
StarCraft has a colorblind mode. And
another game made by
shit.
Blizzard. Yeah. Yeah, Blizzard is one of the bigger companies that is heading towards that, and I feel like their games are big enough because they have a small amount of bigger franchises that they can use and put that through to kind of set an example. So That should be I'm excited to open up a game and just have it be like a regular everyday game and be like, oh yeah, here's the colorblind mode because it's always there.
Or
and that's just an example. There are other disability
Right.
accessibility features that need to be implemented, but that's just
but colorblind should be
but colorblind
standard.
is super important.
I'm just saying. It seems like the easiest. You just change the color palette.
Yeah, it does seem like the easiest.
You're like, oh, now I can see the fucking
You, literally,
game.
you can just put a filter over it that just reinterprets stuff.
I'm sure it's that easy. That's why they do it.
Yeah.
So in the educational simulations and gaming worlds, accessibility is a big issue because these things are used in classrooms, and so there's legal mandates for certain types of accessibility. The problem is that there's not really a good understanding for how to make all these sorts of things.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Because it seems like every kind of disability is person to person. Like you have blindness, right? But not everybody is blind as some other people.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a spectrum, and you could have vision challenges and hearing issues, or vision challenges and mobility issues. So it's not a single use case kind of thing. So what I find really helpful in my work is to think about, rather than thinking about, I'm designing for someone who's blind, or I'm designing for somebody with a hand mobility problem, is I think about how can I expand the input and output features of this thing that I'm creating. So how can I have output that's more than just visual? How can I have output be auditory? How can I have, descriptions and sound and some text? How can I have output that's not just, the changing graphics? How can I have input that is not just, using a mouse or using a touchpad, or how can I have it be gesture, or keyboard control, or other things. So that way, you can meet the needs of people who have visual impairments or mobility impairments, or whatever it is. But you didn't have to, you didn't just kind of funnel in your design on one group to the exclusion of other groups. You're just kind of expanding all the resources available for other folks.
Yeah, and it seems more realistic too.
Yeah, and also what I think, another benefit from that perspective is it means that you're constantly looking at the cutting edge of input and output for technology, right?
Yeah.
So my work is mostly focused now on accessibility of educational resources, but I get to go to, for example, there's a conference called CHI that's all about the cutting edge of research around technology and technology devices and the interface between humans and technology. Because I'm interested in, okay, well, how do I get haptic feedback? How do I use haptic feedback in my game and simulation environment? How do I use gesture controls? And so those are cutting edge, broadly for technology. But I look at them from an accessibility perspective, but it keeps me at the cutting edge of things.
What you reminded me of when you were talking about that is there was a game that came out a little while ago, and it's a game where you play a magician, and a lot of the stuff you do is controlled on your voice commands. So you tell the magician, or you tell people to do things or interact with characters in the game by actually speaking to them instead of just using the mouse and keyboard. And at first I thought about that's a gimmick to sell the game, but then thinking about it through that lens, it's actually there's some kid out there who's I get to play a game where I'm a magician and I don't have to just watch someone play it or something like that because I can't use my hands the same way. So actually that's a really cool game idea from that perspective.
Yeah. And also if you're thinking about things just as, features as opposed to, a particular accessibility mode, if you're visually impaired, then you'll use this mode versus all the other modes. If you think about them just as features, then it is just that. It is just features. It is
it's normalized.
It's a feature of this particular game that you can speak to it. Or hey, you can have all kinds of different color palettes, and it just turns out that some of those are really good if you're colorblind, or some of those are really good if you have some visual impairment and need high contrast. And then you're not like, got to find the colorblind mode, but you're like, oh, this one,
Look at
this
all
one
my
I really
options.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like that also has a great way of normalizing it, where you're not pointing it out. You're not like, oh, this is for colorblind people, go here, or this is
It's
for
not
people
like,
who are
dude,
visually
we
impaired.
gotta play in colorblind mode.
Yeah, it kind of, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. But okay, so what we're going to do now is, if you want, because we don't have your information on a slide like we do others, just, I guess,
We have one slide.
Yeah, we have one slide. If you pay attention,
The
it's
one
actually the same.
slideshow.
It's the same as the first slide, but just slightly changed. But I guess provide some information on where people can access
Sure.
kind of what you look on and things like that.
Yeah. So the project I'm a part of is called PhET Interactive Simulations. We're out of the University of Colorado in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. You can find us online at phet.colorado.edu. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, under PhETSims, PhETSIMS.
Perfect, awesome, and thank you so much for following djackson7581. It really means a lot. Yeah, and thank you for coming on, Emily, and talking with us about this
me.
and giving us your perspective. I feel like that was really, really cool. As far as where you can find the podcast and us, Matt and I were with Neanderthal Gaming TV. Just about everything has our name in it as far as YouTube and Twitch are concerned. But if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can look at @NeanderthalGTV. And our longtime co-host, who just wasn't able to make it today, he is found at SuperFistCake on YouTube, at SuperFistCake on Twitter, and just Fistcake on Twitch. He does do weekly streams and things of that nature. If you want to catch the podcast next time we're out, it's at 3 p.m. Pacific time on Sundays. And so again, thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to go ahead and go right into the outro.